Hi, this is Jacqueline Dwyer doing my journal entry for simulation number 2. I did the hospice simulation on February 6th from 8 to 2 at Revere in person prior to the COVID stuff. So I had my first simulation the same week and had a great experience. So I was really excited about going to this one. First off, because I had such a good time, and second, I really feel passionate about hospice and that it can be an enormous gift for the patient, for the family. So I was looking forward to it. It had snowed the night before, so one of the students wasn't able to make it. So there was 3 of us, 3 students, the instructor and myself. It was very, very different. I learned about room arrangement, which doesn't sound like much, but this room was set up. Sorry, my dog is going crazy. This room was set up as it had been set up for a prior discussion or prior lecture. So the tables were all facing the front, and we didn't change the arrangement. And I know sometimes people don't like to change the arrangement because then they have to change it back. But it led for a very disjointed session. We had one student was sitting against the far wall, one was over on the corner. The other one was sitting next to her. A couple of them were eating breakfast. One of them was on their phone the whole time, which I found kind of distracting. So we started by talking about what hospice was. And I am not sure, and I just want to make this very clear, I'm not sure what other exposures they had to hospice, what pre-work they had done. Different from my first experience, we didn't go over any of the pre-work. There really was no discussion. There was a little bit of lecture and not participation from the students pretty much at all. They were absolutely not engaged. Again, I don't know if they had already done prep work or if they'd gone over outcomes and stuff that they, the competencies that they were trying to master with this. But they didn't go over it in class, which I think was, it was a downside for me, because I'm left not knowing what they know. And I think that reviewing those in real time is a benefit. Sorry. I do not have COVID. I have wicked allergies to whatever is blooming outside. Sorry. Okay, so it started off, the instructor talked a little bit about what hospice was, what that meant for the nurse, what qualified you for hospice. And then she laid out what we were going to do, and there was 3 parts to the simulation, which meant that each of the students got to play the role as a nurse, which I was very happy about because I had seen that work beautifully in the class before. And because they were missing the 4th, I was the patient for the first 2 simulations, which was interesting. Again, it was just such a different experience. I'm glad I saw both of them. So we went into this little room, and it was the student that was the nurse, the student that was my family member, myself, and the other student remained back in the classroom, and there was a video monitor that they were supposed to monitor it on. Now, I don't know, I can't say I wasn't in there, but considering the lack of engagement from this group, I'm not sure that they watched. I really can't say that they did anything other than bide their time, which is sad because I really do feel strongly about hospice, and I think that it's something that nurses have to learn. It's not something that comes naturally. So we went back, and this was supposed to be the initial intake or assessment. The other thing that struck me was, other than, not going through any of the pre-work, not knowing what, the goals of the simulation were, I was never touched. Never touched. And I think hospice is kind of a touchy-feely part of nursing, not in a weird way, and of course you have to go with what is socially appropriate and culturally appropriate, but this patient and family are inviting you into one of the most intimate parts of their life, and it's awkward when students are learning to be nurses. I know that is one thing that I've always said. I think that techs or nurses' aides have a benefit when they start nursing school because they know how to actually approach a patient, touch a patient. I was never touched in this assessment. They went through the motions, and the instructor did the majority of what was being done, and then we went back in the classroom. At this point, I was waiting for kind of a debriefing, what went well, what went poorly, and there was none. We just moved on. We moved on to the next topic, which again kind of left the feeling of, what are they actually getting out of this? They are simply biding their time. They're checking a box that they did this. So the next simulation was a sick visit. I, again, was the patient. We had a different nurse. We had the same family member. Went back into this room. The other student nurse stayed where the video monitor was. And we went through the motions again. It was a sick visit. They asked me how I was feeling. I said I was having trouble breathing. The student nurse said, well, why don't you get in bed? And then the instructor put the nasal cannula on me. Now, I know that I've been a nurse since 97. Putting a nasal cannula on is not exciting, right? Done it a million times. But there's stuff that can be learned in simulation, and sometimes nasal cannulas can be a little tricky if you've got them the wrong way, or I don't know. But it wasn't even an option for the student nurse to do it, which I think kind of is backwards in simulation. Put the nasal cannula on me and said, well, here's some medications that can help. And we all went back into the other room. There was a little bit more teaching, a little bit more lecture. There was some handouts that the instructor brought out and laid on the table and said, these are really good, you should read them. No real discussion of why, or what could be gained for them, or what the benefit would be to the student. So the last time we went back into the sim room, it was for the death portion, and I was not the patient because they wanted to actually simulate the cessation of breath. So I was able to be in the room and watch on the video screen, which my original fears were recognized, and the other student didn't even look up at the screen. There was, again, no touching of the patient. The conversation was primarily between the instructor and the student that was pretending to be the family. And it was not the simulation I had hoped for. Now, I will say again, I don't know what the prep work was. I don't know how much experience these students have with hospice. Maybe there's a very strong hospice program that they had already been through, and this was just truly checking a box. But it felt like checking a box. It felt like just this was a task. I wish we could have gone over what they learned, like a debriefing. I think that debriefings are incredibly important. Some of the most learning I have ever had, like in a code situation, doesn't happen during the code. It happens in the debriefing afterwards, and everybody can say what went well and what didn't go well and what they thought might work better. And I mean, that even happens during the code when we've kind of exhausted everything, and you know, the person running the code says, okay, any ideas? What can we try next? You know, we bounce that stuff off of each other, and that's where great ideas come from and great learning happens. And that didn't happen in this circumstance. I was struck by the fact that the students were very disengaged, and I know I was very spoiled by my first experience because the students were so engaged. And as I said before, it was remarkable because there was a day student in with the evening students, and she even commented, "Holy cow, you guys are really into this and really active," and it was refreshing for her. So I recognize that I believe they're senior students, on the day of a snowstorm, did not want to be there, were not happy about having to come in the snowstorm. I guess a couple other districts had canceled, or anyway. But it just, it left a lot to be desired from what could have been. And that's my basset hound who thinks that the cat is her play toy. She wouldn't hurt her. She's just crazy. Yeah, so it just left a lot to be desired. I was very disappointed. I was kind of sad for these students because I know when I was in school, we talked about hospice for a very short amount of time, and if you didn't have personal experience in it, it was scary the first time you saw it in real life in the hospital. And just the concept that you may be sending your patient home to die, and you have to mentally prepare for that, and the family has to mentally prepare for that, and the patient has to mentally prepare for that, and what that means, and there was so much that could have been done and could have been said. There wasn't a way that I could have put my 2 cents in. I know in prior one, the other instructors had said, Delilah May, stop. The other instructors had said, chime in, but this was a very different, this was very different. It was very different. It was a little bit unsettling. I'm very disappointed. At first I was kind of disappointed that I didn't say something. It really would not have been appropriate. But I did learn that engagement is important, and presence is important. I think that having everybody in the same room, and I know that sim room is small, but there was only one additional person who could have stood at the door. I can see where with a large group that space would not have accommodated a larger class. But even if there was all 4 students, I think something would have been gained from being there in person, if not from the actual observation of it, just the fact that they were present for it. Yeah, so I've been in Sims, kind of grown up as a nurse with Sims coming to the forefront. And I mean, when I was in LPN school, a sim was you lay in the bed while your fellow students learn how to make a bed around you. You don't say anything. They don't talk to you like you're a patient. You're just a body. And that's what our sim was. Or you're the one that they do a pretend sponge bath to. And it has come so far that these sim patients talk to you and have vitals and die. And, I think that there was a missing part of this, and I would very much like to see it done differently. I don't have that option. And I'm not slamming on the teacher. I have no idea what the pre-work was. I wish we would have gone over it. But I think the students just passed time. And I think it's sad because there's a lot to be learned. And who knew I was this much of a fan of simulations? But I guess I am. So that's my reflection. That's it. I'm going to try to upload this. This is the 4th time that I've done this, and none of them have uploaded. So we'll see. And thanks for letting me have the opportunity to redo it. I'm glad I put some space in between redoing it because it was such a difference, and it was so disappointing to me as a student that this is what they got. And that was hard for me, and I think it probably showed in my first reflection. So anyway, hope this one was better. And I'm going to try to upload it. Have a great day. Stay COVID safe.